from A to M and V, or from audit to measurement and verification. Whether you're a contractor, a student looking to be an energy engineer, a building owner looking to hire an energy engineer, or something else in between, we are going to take a look at the process all the way from audit to post-construction measurement and verification, and what that looks like and what needs to be considered. So stay tuned, we have a lot to cover. High energy bills, sustainability challenges like high carbon footprint, policies making you to question whether you need to do something different in terms of your carbon emissions and the way you use energy, maybe even health concerns from the people in your space, like quality of air and water and thermal comfort. It's too cold, too hot. You know that all of these things are interconnected, but maybe you don't know exactly why or how. And so today, through looking at the entire process from audit to M&V, will give you further insight into all the things that need to be considered through that engineering process. Also, in addition to this video, please take a look at the energy pyramid video. I know I've referenced it a lot in some of my other videos as well, but it really is the starting point to what an energy engineer does. So the first thing that needs to be considered is the type of building that you're considering. Residential buildings, commercial buildings, industrial buildings, educational buildings, healthcare facilities, public buildings, recreational buildings, transport buildings, agricultural buildings, and data centers. And now, what is the difference between all of these types of buildings, particularly like residential versus commercial? We know that we do different things in these different buildings, but what is the main difference that needs to be taken into consideration when you're looking at energy and sustainability and even healthy spaces? Well, first of all, we can make a distinction between these buildings, between people occupied and something else. If you're taking a look at an agricultural building or a data center, people aren't the focus in that building. It's something else, maybe plants and produce, or servers and computers. The building will be quite different if you take people out of the equation. But what separates the rest of the buildings and why the distinction? Well, it's how they're used and therefore how their energy is being used. So taking into consideration the amount of people that are in that space, when they are in that space, and what they are doing in that space. A healthcare facility is a lot different than an office building because you have sick people. You have contaminants in the air that you don't want spreading to other people that don't have that virus or disease. So you need better quality air in that space. A commercial building versus a residential building, the time of day that people are in that space will change. And so therefore, if you consider the utility rate, when you're using energy, the cost is going to change dramatically versus if you're inside an office during 8 to 9 versus when you're at home from 5 to the next morning at 8 a.m. Also, what is being done in those spaces? If you consider a more industrial space, people are maybe moving more fast, they're on their feet, they're maybe sweating because it's more hot because it's a manufacturing facility, or maybe it's colder because they're producing something that needs to be colder, like food and fish, or maybe ice cream. And so the space and what the people are doing is going to be quite different in how the energy is used. For facilities that people are moving faster and maybe they're sweating, there's also going to be more humidity in the space, which is also going to change the equipment that is being used in order to make a more comfortable environment or just meet the requirements of that space. So that's step one. is understanding the building that's being taken into consideration for this project. The second most important question, whether you're the building owner or the energy engineer asking the questions, is determining what you're going to focus on. And as I'm talking about this, I keep calling the engineer energy engineer because that's what I am, but it could also be sustainability engineer, and that is probably a better name for the broad variety of things that they take into consideration. Because as we get into it, knowing what you're focusing on could span into a variety of things, and then this will also determine what kind of audit you're looking to have on your building or what the engineer is looking to audit for you. I like to group them into 3 main categories: energy, sustainability, and healthy spaces. If you're just taking into consideration energy, you're probably just focusing on your utility bills. But it's also important to make the distinction between energy or your utility bills, because are you including water? And that's not energy, but it's a utility bill. And so those are the resources that your building is consuming. So making that distinction is important. Do you want to reduce your energy, or are you reducing all of your utility bills together? Also, under energy, it's important to also make the distinction of, do you just want to reduce your energy consumption, or are you also looking to reduce your utility spend? Because maybe there's different priorities within that you are considering. If you're looking to reduce your energy consumption because you're looking to reduce your carbon footprint, well then the ROI, the return on your investment for the project that you're going to be implementing into the building, might be different than someone who's just looking to save money. And so priorities on the project are important to understand, because a project that is doing a top to bottom improvement, even though they're going to reduce their carbon emissions by a whole lot, they still might not have the best ROI in terms of someone that's just replacing the equipment that need to be replaced, and maybe a few other things that are really focused on the building improvements. Also, as you go through the audit, this will also help you determine what information to collect. But let's keep going through the different topics, and this will give you even a better idea. So, sustainability. What's the biggest distinction between an energy project, and a sustainability project? Well, for a sustainability project, you might be more considered about your carbon footprint versus your utility bills. And so what would be the distinction for a project like that? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is actually like a backup diesel generator that a facility might have. That uses energy, but it's not really on their utility bills because it's a backup generator. And so if you're looking to reduce their utility bills, you're probably not going to consider it in your audit. However, for a project more focused on sustainability, you might consider it because you have diesel fuel on site, which produces carbon emissions, and the generator itself, maybe you did have to run it a few times, and so you are producing carbon emissions from this generator that you have on site. So that's going to directly target your carbon emissions. For a sustainability project, it's also important to make the distinction between sustainability for your building or sustainability for your business. Sustainability for your building is also not going to include as many things than if you were including things for your business as well. A building is just an asset that you have for your business. But in order to run your business, you also have people to run the business inside of that building, as well as other companies that you might work with in order to do business. And so what might that look like? Well, how do the people get to and from work every day? If your people have to come into the office every day to do the work, to run the business, how are they traveling there? Does every single person in that office have to drive a car to get there? Or can some people walk? Can some people take public transportation? If that's the case, then your carbon emissions will be lower. Also, if you're working with other companies, say you manufacture a product, well, where do those materials come from? And what are those carbon emissions? What does the manufacturing facility look like? And what's the emissions for that facility? Taking into consideration the carbon emissions of all of the other aspects of a business might be included in a sustainability project, but that's for a business, and the building is just an aspect of that. Finally, you have healthy spaces within a building. Healthy spaces are really focused around the people that you have in that building. And it could really include healthy space for whatever you have in that facility, but you're considering things more like the quality of air, the quality of water, thermal comfort, sound comfort. Is it too noisy for people to concentrate, and things like that? Food accessibility. Do people have access to healthy food to keep them energized throughout the day? Accessibility for people. If you have able-bodied people as well as disabled people in the office, does everyone have an easy way to access their desk in the morning? And then you can continue to just add on this healthy spaces of what you consider healthy in a space. And you can consider, do you want to create a community in that space, places for innovate and to spark creativity? And the list can go on, and some might say it sounds a little frivolous, but it's really however large you want to take a project. And a lot of these things overlap, because if you're considering sustainable materials, sustainable design and layout, it can really expand to include a lot of things. What you include in a project could be just as important as what you exclude from a project. And so when you go and do an energy audit, or if you're expecting someone to come and do an audit on your facility, it's important to set those boundaries of what your expectations are. Are you just looking at your utility bills? Or are you looking at this whole grand scheme of things to include in that audit? What you are looking to focus on, whether it's energy, sustainability, and or healthy spaces, is probably one of the first questions you want to ask for. But then also, what is the service that you are looking to provide? And even if you are only providing one service, it's really important to understand where your service touches all of these additional building improvements or potential building improvements, because then you can have a larger conversation with your client or with your engineer. So to have a further understanding of whether you need to hire someone else, whether that's not something that you want, whether it is something that you want, and then everyone together feels more confident. And if you're working with clients, most likely they will come back to you for more services. So if you're a contractor considering to include energy services or maybe even sustainability services as one of your offerings, I want to take a look at an example of what that could look like for you. So I always like to start with HVAC because there's so many moving parts with it. So let's consider you are an HVAC maintenance technician and you get a call from a commercial office building that the AC is just not cooling the space enough. You've determined that they haven't serviced their equipment and it's just not being maintained properly. So how does this affect energy, sustainability, and thus healthy spaces? And To be honest, you probably have a pretty good intuition of all of these things already, but be able to pinpoint and outline all of these things for your customer is super important in having those conversations. So let's take a look together. If a system isn't being well maintained, maybe the belt on the motor isn't as tight as it used to be. Insulation on the pipes on the roof are starting to wear and tear due to the sun. Just the parts inside aren't well oiled anymore. Your system is working harder, and therefore it's using more energy to cool the space. And so, thus, using more energy, more carbon emissions. Sustainability. If the system isn't being serviced and maintained, well, now you're replacing parts that maybe wouldn't have been needed to be replaced if the system was well maintained. Even if the filters weren't replaced, your fan now has to work harder to push the air through this blocked up filter with dust and dander and all that kind of stuff. So now that your filter is blocked, now this is also affecting the healthy spaces for the people in your building. Not only aren't being cooled well enough, but now the air in the space isn't really good for them anymore because you have more dust and dander. Also, if there isn't sufficient outside air being supplied to the inside space, now you also have increased CO2. We breathe in oxygen, we exhale CO2. And increased CO2 in a space can cause tiredness and brain fog. People aren't as productive anymore, and now you're affecting the business because people aren't working as productively as they would have been if there was more outside air and oxygen being supplied into the building. So even just through an HVAC maintenance technician service, you can see all the different connections from energy, sustainability, and creating healthy spaces for your clients. You are not just helping maintain and service a unit, but you are helping your client's business, people, and the environment. Even if you're only going to provide one service for your client, do you plan to recommend a more wider array of solutions for them? Because if, sure, you do the service on their HVAC equipment, is that space still being cooled enough? Maybe they have really large windows in the space and they could use more glazing, or maybe insulation in the space, and so on and so forth, to really determine, they are cooling the space as efficiently as possible. And all of that will also determine what you need to include in your audit. So that's building envelope, the amount of people and schedule in a space, the equipment types, quantities, and maintenance level. Also, utility bills. And do you want to spend the time collecting the utility bills, organizing them, and benchmarking all of that information for your client? When you are determining the services and the solutions that you're either looking to provide or looking to get from a building owner will all depend on the type of information that the engineer will collect. All right, so the audit is complete and all of the information is collected. Now it's time for the engineer to do the calculations. And even still, there are a lot of questions to ask when it comes to the calculations. Again, you're going to ask yourself, what is the goal from this energy audit? Is the customer just looking for a quick solution? And so maybe some quick and dirty rule of thumb calculations will get you to where you need to be. Or are there other things tied to the project, like incentives and rebates, maybe a loan and other financial obligations for the project that also are looking for some kind of report that is guaranteeing savings? Well, now you want to make sure you have all of the information collected and that your savings calculations more accurate. So now you're also asking yourself, how accurate do they need to be? And that really also depends on what the customer is looking for, what kind of financial obligations are tied and contracts are tied to the project, and if M&V is required, measurement and verification, post-construction. So what will the report be used for? Now you're also thinking, well, more accurate calculations will probably require more time. So yes, what's your budget? Do you just want something quick and dirty, or are you looking to invest in the project to get the most accurate savings and solutions? What data do you already have available, and what resources do you have available? Maybe this is just the first time you're the building owner meeting the engineer, and you just want something quick first, as like a preliminary project, but then the engineer will come back once you have the solution and do a more detailed report. So the preliminary report, you're looking at different solutions and different options as far as what you can do for the building. But then the detailed report will come in as your final solution. Everyone agrees that this is the best solution. So now you go in, collect more information, and have more accurate savings. Finally, complexity of the building and time frame, of course, are also important to consider when you're taking a look at the calculations, because a more complex building will take more time to calculate, more equipment, more utility meters is more information to collect. And so all of that will also affect the time frame for that project. All right, so where are we? We did the audit. We know what the customer wants. We did the calculations. We have all of this information. We not only have the data that we collected, pictures of what we found on site, utility bills, we benchmark their building against other buildings just like it. And so now we're putting all of this information into a report. We want to make sure we list all of our assumptions, because that not only sets expectations between two parties of what we're including and what we're excluding. Remember, we talked about the difference between energy, sustainability, and healthy spaces. But it also sets expectations of the purpose of this project altogether. So we want to make sure we focus this report about what the client's wants and needs are, but also the purpose of the report altogether. Is the report just for the client? Or if you have incentives and rebates and loans and other contracts included, do all of these other third parties have requirements for the report? And so that'll also make a big distinction on what you're looking to include in the report. Either case, when you create a report, I like to think about it as creating a story for the client. Now, if you're following a template and you have certain requirements for these other third parties and contracts and stuff like that, stick with the template and what they ask you to do. However, if it's just for a client and you're focusing around the client's wants and needs, I like to make sure that the report focuses on those things. Now, it's important to include a lot of things. You have a lot of data at this point, even if it's just a simple project. But don't complicate the report with all of this extra data that doesn't directly tie into the customer's wants and needs. So, what is the most important things to include? Well, of course, what the solution is, what the cost of the project is, savings, and ROI are probably the most important things. And you'll be able to put a story together as you get to know the client, you walk the building, and you get to know maybe there are other things that you found in the building that are important. So you want to show that with pictures and data to tie that and explain why this is important and what problems this solves. But when you're creating the report, you want to make sure that it's readable for you and the client. So you want to include all of that information, but where do you put all the stuff that doesn't fit in the stories? Put it in the back in the appendix. So please include all that information. It's important to include all of the additional data and stuff that you collected so everyone has it and it's there if someone does want to dig in deeper, but include it in the back. Finally, we get to the most exciting part, implementation or the start of construction day. This is where you get to shine and do what you do best. You are the contractor. You are the person going in and doing the thing. You are replacing the equipment. You are updating the building. You are implementing controls. You are implementing automation, optimizing their building, whatever it is that you do. This is the point. Everyone's on the same page and you are making the building, you are making the world an itty bit better. After construction is complete, this is a point in time where you may do measurement and verification. And measurement and verification is just like what it sounds like. It is measuring and verifying that the savings post-construction is within a reasonable amount what's in the report, what was promised. And so everything leading up to this point will determine how accurate you are with those savings. Now, there is a lot within M&V all on its own, and I do want to take a moment that if you are interested in M&V, there is a large rabbit hole we can go down into determining how accurate we can get those savings. And there are other standards and procedures in making sure that you are calculating the savings that the client will ultimately get in the end. But for now, in the purpose of this video, we will just leave it at that. And so, but that is something to consider, and that will also determine what kind of audit that you're doing in the beginning. So if you do plan on doing M&V in the end, you should know that you're going to do M&V in that initial audit, because you will have to set up the building with other controls in place and other agreements between you and the client. You may have to come back on site multiple times. Also, how long is that measurement and verification contract? Is it only for a year post-construction, or is it for more than that? 3, 5 years, 20 years, which is not uncommon for things like government buildings that have to guarantee that they are getting the savings that they were promised for a long period of time. Most clients, though, only really need to verify their savings for a couple of years post-construction, because you have gone in, you've already improved their building. They are not only saving energy, but maybe they're also saving maintenance and operation costs. And so they're pretty happy. And so once they just get that first validation, most of the time that's good enough. Or they don't even want that verification. A lot of clients too, if you don't have anything else requiring you to do that M&V, a lot of customers are completely happy just getting all of those improvements. Today, 2023, with the Inflation Reduction Act and a lot of other incentive and rebates, allow customers to get financial benefits from doing all of these building upgrades. And so if you put that together with the solutions that you're providing and telling them all of the additional benefits that they're getting, they're not only reducing their carbon footprint and saving energy and saving money on their utility bills, but they're also creating healthier spaces, and their employees are happy, or residents are happy, and what have you. A lot of times just implementing that solution will be good enough for the client, because their building is an itty bit better. I hope this video was insightful for you, whether you are that contractor or building owner looking to do an audit on your building and determine just how much energy you use or what your carbon footprint is. I hope this was helpful. Let me know below in the comments if there's anything I missed or if there are additional questions. I'm sure there are. This was just a brief overview of what it takes to be an energy or sustainability engineer. And so please let me know below what I missed or what you want to know more about. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.